All right, again, today is March 3rd, 2025. I am Judge Case Johnson. This is the preliminary hearing. Are you Mr. Taekwon Owens? Just nod your head. All right, we're about to have your preliminary hearing, sir. You are charged in warrant number 2025 WA 71648 improper lane change and 2025 WA 71649 violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act. Representing the state is ADA Thomas. Representing the defendant is Ms. Walton.
Yes, Your Honor. Angie Walton. Thank you.
Ms. Angie Walton, ADA Thomas, your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer, could you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the evidence you shall give before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
You can put your hand down, state your name for the record.
Deputy Mondre Rambo of the Clayton County Sheriff's Office.
And Deputy Rambo, were you so employed on February the 3rd of 2025?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you on duty at a 5480 Riverdale Road?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that in the city? Is that in Atlanta, Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am.
It's not actually in the city of Atlanta, is it?
No, ma'am. It's not. It's unincorporated Clayton County.
Okay, and it's just called Atlanta?
Yes, ma'am. So certain zip codes either use College Park or either use Atlanta, but they still fall within the Clayton County lines.
Okay, just want to be clear. And did you come into contact with the Taekwon Owens on that date in that approximate location?
I did.
And what brought you into contact with Mr. Owens?
Prior to us arriving at that location, I observed a black Nissan that was traveling northbound on Riverdale Road. It was in the median headed towards the Waffle House, located at 5480 Riverdale Road. The car improperly changed lanes in front of a blue Dodge Charger, and I noticed it because I observed the Dodge Charger slam on their brakes to avoid hitting the unidentified driver. Got behind the driver, conducted a routine NCIC GCIC check of the vehicle.
I'm sorry, Deputy Rambo, can you speak a little louder for me?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me? Can you hear me a little better, Judge?
Yes, yes.
I believe you stopped that you got behind the vehicle.
Yes, ma'am. So, are you able to hear me?
I can. Judge, can you
Yes,
hear?
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. My volume's a little low, but I got behind the vehicle, conducted a NCIC GCIC check of the vehicle, and it yielded that the registered owner of the driver had an active arrest warrant out of Clayton County. And because of those violations in that information from the system, I conducted a traffic stop of the vehicle in that area, made contact with Mr. Owens, and positively identified him as the driver that had an active warrant. So he was detained.
Stop you right quick. Let me stop you right quick. You say you were able to successfully complete the traffic stop?
I'm sorry, man. One moment. I'm having volume issues.
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's the issue. Real. How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes. Johnny,
Okay.
can you hear?
I can hear him now. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. What were you asking?
You pulled him over. You were able to successfully complete the traffic stop?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there anyone else in the vehicle other than Mr. Owens?
No, ma'am.
And after he pulled over, what happened?
So after he pulled over, I made contact with him and observed that he was the actual driver that had the active arrest warrant. So he was detained.
How were you able to determine that?
By the picture that was so the registered owner comes back to there's a registered owner of said vehicle, and then it yields the driver's license information that has a picture associated with that information. So I was able to positively identify him based on that picture.
And when you say positively identified, you mean he was the person, the subject of the warrant?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What happened next?
He was detained for further investigation. During me detaining him, I smelled the odor of marijuana coming from his vehicle. So I asked him, did he have any marijuana in the vehicle? And he advised that he did. So I conducted a proper call search of the vehicle.
Okay, you said when you asked him that, he said what?
He said that he had marijuana in the vehicle. He advised
Did
he
he
had.
tell you? He did what now?
He said that he had marijuana in the vehicle.
Okay, and did he tell you where the marijuana was?
I can't remember off the top of my head now.
Did you search the vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what happened during your search or after your search?
But during the search of the vehicle, I discovered a yellow plastic baggie containing what I believe to be suspected marijuana. Along with that bag, there were two clear, smaller baggies located in that plastic bag that I also suspected to be marijuana.
Were you able to weigh the suspected marijuana?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you able to field test the substance?
No, ma'am.
How did you know that it was marijuana as opposed to oregano?
I did not. I suspected it to be marijuana. At the conclusion of the investigation, that marijuana was sent to our evidence room so that it could be positively identified by the crime labs.
What made you think that it was marijuana?
Based on my knowledge, training, and experience in the smell and consistency of it.
You've seen something like that before?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, after you found, do you recall where you found the two baggies?
Yes, ma'am. It was located between the driver's seat and the center console.
Both of them?
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe you previously testified no one else was in the vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
And it is, in fact, his car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. After you found the two baggies, what happened?
Continue my search of the vehicle and located approximately $1,936 in cash, U.S. currency,
Where was that found?
in the center console of the vehicle.
Did he say anything about the money?
Yes, ma'am. He said that the money was for, I believe, a t-shirt business.
And what else happened?
So the money was retrieved and the marijuana was retrieved. Um, and based on the amount of marijuana that was retrieved in conjunction with the amount of cash, led me to believe that, and the two individually baggies that was located in the plastic bag led me to believe that those items were consistent with an intent to distribute that marijuana for
Did he
resale.
tell you what they were intended for? Did he make any comments or statements regarding what the marijuana was for?
Yes, ma'am. He advised it was for personal use.
And the money and the marijuana were together?
Yeah, well, they weren't together in the center console. The items were between the seat and the driver console, and the money was by itself in the center console.
None of it was found on his person? The money wasn't on his person?
No, ma'am.
And I believe you indicated the total weight was 76 grams?
That's correct.
In your experience, is that amount a personal use amount?
No, ma'am.
Kind of 1 second, make sure I'm not missing anything.
All right.
Now, after recovering the marijuana and the money, what else happened?
After recovering the marijuana and the money, Mr. Owens was placed under arrest for the improper lane change, was with the original reason for the stop. His active arrest warrant out of Clayton County. And then the marijuana that he has to have between the driver's seat and the center console. So that's how I came about those three actual charges.
Okay. Now, were you equipped with body cam or any type of video?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it working in proper order during this incident?
Yes, ma'am.
Did it record your interactions with Mr. Owens?
Yes, ma'am.
Did it record the conversations and what have you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did it also record the location or you finding the marijuana and the money in the car?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know where that video is now?
I'm not sure. I believe it's in the cloud. We use Axon, so I'm assuming it would be with the cloud.
But it should be preserved. Is that your understanding?
Correct. That's my understanding to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. And are you able to see who's in the courtroom today? You're on a phone, correct? Or laptop?
Phone.
Okay. Can you see the defendant in court this morning?
Yes, ma'am, I can, Your Honor.
Can you well, I'm DA. Can you identify him by physical appearance or article of clothing?
Yes, ma'am. Physical appearance, brown skin male, twist in his head, and an orange, what I believe a Clayton County detention jumpsuit.
Okay. Your Honor, I believe that's all I have of the deputy at this time. Reserved right for redirect.
All right, Attorney Walton Cross.
Thank you. Good morning, Deputy Rambo.
Good morning, ma'am.
Now, you testified earlier that you stopped Mr. Owens at 5480 Riverdale Road.
Yes, ma'am.
So you wouldn't have been located at that 5480 Riverdale Road when you first made observations of Mr. Owens, would you?
No, ma'am.
So where were you?
I was traveling northbound on Riverdale Road.
And you mentioned that Mr. Owens improperly entered Riverdale Road. Are you suggesting that he came from a street or road other than Riverdale Road?
Yes, ma'am. He came from an apartment complex adjacent to the road. So he came from the apartment, turned out from the apartment complex into the center lane, the center median lane. And then from there, as the blue Dodge Charger was coming, he jumped over to the right, and the Dodge Charger had to slam on brakes to avoid rear-ending Mr. Owens.
Were you able to ascertain approximately how much distance there was between the blue Dodge Charger and Mr. Owens's car?
No, ma'am, not from where I was traveling down the road.
Okay. You weren't able to get any statement or anything from the driver of the blue Dodge Charger, were you?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And how many lanes are on the northbound side of Riverdale Road?
I believe 2 lanes.
Okay. All right. One moment. Did you happen to observe the name of the apartment complex that Mr. Owens was turning out of on Riverdale Road?
No.
And you mentioned on direct that you were able to weigh what you termed as the marijuana. How did you weigh it?
It was weighed with a scale in the field.
Now, you mentioned that you believe that the body cam footage is stored in Axion. Did you actually submit it or put it on the docker for it to be downloaded to Axion?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you do it on the same day or afternoon when you were closing your shift?
I do not recall. I don't recall.
Would that be standard protocol for you to dock the body cam when you get into the sheriff's office?
Yes, ma'am.
No further questions, Deputy. Thank you.
All right, any redirect, ADA Thomas.
Not at this time, Your Honor.
All right, closing arguments, ADA Thomas.
I'd like to reserve, Your Honor.
All right, Attorney Walton.
Your Honor, I submit on the evidence.
All right, so based upon the evidence presented, I do find that there is sufficient probable cause to bind both of the charges over to the Clayton County Superior Court. That's the order of the court. Attorney Walton, you are free to go. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
And
Attorney Walton.
the news media is trying to come back in. I'm not sure why.
Deputy Rambo, you're free to go. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Judge.
And then you're welcome. Thank you very much for your time. Isaac Dewater, Deputy, if you would get Mr. Dewater.
In Your Honor, an additional officer should be in the process of logging on, and Channel 2 is back.
All right, Channel 2, what case are you here for? Yate, can you message Channel 2 and find out what case they're here on, please? Because it's probably Miss Gully, but that case was continued, so. Are you Mr. Dewater? Yes, okay, all right. Mhm. We're about to start your preliminary hearing.
In your honor, before we start, just wanted to notify the court that Brandon Lewis has just replied. He sent the consent waiver to myself and to Ms. Davis with the Public Defender's Office.
And that's on Freeman.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, great, thank you. And just for clarity, Mr. Dewater has quite a few charges. He has drugs with the intent to distribute marijuana. Then he has a Schedule 2 drug possession. Then he has dangerous drugs in a container, financial transaction card fraud. Let me just count. So he should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 charges. Is that correct? Just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. Attorney Rogers, is that right? About 12 charges?
11, you said, I thought you said 11. I count 11 on the
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
11 also, Your Honor.
11, okay, all righty.
Officer Fender, I need you to turn on your audio and your video.
I think we are still live on YouTube. This is the preliminary hearing for Mr. Isaac Dewater, charged in warrant number 2025 CW 70235, violation of Georgia Controlled Substance with the intent, 2025 CW 70237, VGCSA Controlled Substance Schedule 1, 2025 CW 70238, dangerous drugs in an improper container, 2025 CW 70244, financial transaction card theft, 2025 CW 70245, financial card theft, 2025 CW 70246, financial transaction card theft, 2025 CW 70247, financial transaction card theft, 2025 CW 70248, financial transaction card theft, 2025 CW 70249, financial transaction card theft, 2025 CW 70250, identity fraud, 2025 CW 70251, identity fraud. Representing the state is ADA Thomas. Representing the defendant is Attorney Rogers. Your witness, ADA Thomas.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Fender, can you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the evidence you shall give before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So help me God.
Put your hand down, state your name for the record.
Officer Philip Fender, Clayton County Police Department.
And Officer Fender, were you so employed on January 20th of 2025?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you happen to respond to an incident that occurred at 5390 Riverdale Road?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that within the confines of City of Atlanta? Well, not City of Atlanta, Clayton County.
Correct. It's the address is listed as Atlanta, but like the previous case, it is still in Clayton County, zip code 30349.
Okay, and that's the postal designation, not the actual physical location.
Correct.
Okay. Now, what brought you to investigate the incident at 5390 Riverdale?
The original call was just for the Clayton County Fire and Emergency Services for a 33-year-old male having difficulty breathing. 33-year-old male wearing all black. Clayton County Fire and Emergency Services arrives on scene and they start attending to that person.
Okay, also, I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second. You're on the road, but let me stop you right quick. What's located at that address?
That is the Quick Trip gas station at the corner of Riverdale Road and Crystal Lake Road, 5390 Riverdale Road.
Okay, so someone at Quick Trip called for an emergency.
Correct.
Okay, please continue.
So it was a third-party caller for a 33-year-old black male wearing all black. that was having difficulty breathing. And Clayton County Fire and Emergency Services arrives and they start working their evaluations on that male. While they are there, they observe a secondary male, male in his approximate lower 20s wearing a tan hoodie, also having difficulty breathing there. And they start performing evaluations on him. So he was not the subject of the original call, and he's not the one who reached out for help. As they're working their evaluations on him, they find a holster on him, and fearing that there might be a firearm on him somewhere, given his erratic behavior, they search him more, and they find a little fanny pack that is clipped to his belt. When they remove that fanny pack to make sure there's not a firearm in there, they find multiple debit cards of different names, multiple IDs of different names, as well as a bunch of different illegal substances. At which time they contacted.
Okay, let me stop it. Let me stop it right here. Did PD check the fanny pack, or did emergency services check it? The fire department.
The initial check was by Clayton County Fire and Emergency Services, but as soon as they found these items in it, they set it aside and called the police department to come out and investigate it, and that's where I got dispatched.
So the person that was being treated for some type of medical issue, at least that's what it started out as?
It started out as somebody being treated for a medical issue. But again, they found a holster on him, and thinking that there might be a firearm somewhere. And because at this point, they already recognized it was drug impairment, they tried to search him for the firearm to make sure it never got used. That's when they located the fanny pack filled with all the different items.
Now, the person we're talking about, is that Jalen Freeman?
Which person? The person that they found the
No,
firearm, the holster on?
Hold on one second. Hold on.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
The person that they found the fanny pack on.
No, ma'am.
Okay, so that was the other person that was found at the scene?
Yes, ma'am. The other person that was found at the scene was not the original subject of the call. That is somebody else they found having a medical emergency while they were already on scene for a completely separate call.
Okay. Now, before the court today is a Jalen Freeman. How did he get involved in this, or what is his involvement?
Mr. Jalen Freeman, to my knowledge, is not involved in this case.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong name on my calendar. Isaac Dewater. I'm confused.
Mr. Isaac Dewater. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So how did Mr. Dewater get involved in all of this?
So I didn't identify Mr. Isaac Dewater till later. As soon as I arrived on scene, in Clayton County Fire and Emergency Services provided me with his bag, they advised that he might be possibly close to dying, and they needed to make it to the Southern Regional Hospital as soon as possible to give him life-saving treatment. At which time I followed them there with my emergency equipment activated to perform an investigation. While I'm there, I look through the fanny pack with all the items in it, and I notice multiple bank cards with the name Isaac Dewater. And I initiated a clear search through my FTO at the time, Officer Milligan, and he located Mr. Isaac Dewater's information. I checked the driver's license photo associated with his driver's license when I checked his information through GCIC, NCIC, and the resulting photo matched to the subject that had been taken to the hospital due to a possible overdose.
Okay. So he wasn't able to cooperate or provide any statements due to his medical condition at the time?
I tried talking to him. He was in and out of consciousness. He could barely talk. The only thing he could manage to get out was that his first name was Isaac, and that his birthday was November 9th.
Was he able to...
November 6th, my apologies.
Was he able to advise as to what happened to him?
No, ma'am. He mentioned something about being poisoned, but that's almost all I could understand from what he was saying, because it was very labored, it was very shallow, very raspy, and then again he was in and out of consciousness. So it's I couldn't verify anything about being poisoned.
Did he say anything about the contents of the fanny pack?
No, ma'am. He wasn't able to answer questions on that due to his medical state. Okay.
And believe you, if I'm not mistaken, you said something about that his ID was found inside the fanny pack and other items.
His ID was not found inside the fanny pack, which is why I had to utilize a clear search for to locate his identification. Inside the fanny pack were multiple, or I believe it's 2 other IDs. I have to look back at my notes since I found a lot of stuff in there. I believe 2 other IDs that did not come back to him. One was a Georgia driver's license in the name of Benjamin Jones Jr. One was a Georgia ID card in the name of Joshua Thompson, neither of which are his. Also found were multiple bank cards, some of which were in his name, but many of which were not in his name. And we had a black Cash App card in the name of Rodney Matthews, a black Visa debit card from NetSpend in the name of Missy Matthews. We had a black Cash App card.
Okay, hold on, because it's a lot of cards, and we're gonna have to kind of make sure we get them all covered. What is a NetSpend card?
Yes, ma'am. It was a black Visa NetSpend debit card in the name of Missy Matthews.
So it's a debit card, I guess, because you said NetSpend. I wasn't sure what that was.
Yes, ma'am.
It's some kind of debit card.
Yes, ma'am. It had NetSpend on it, but it also says it is a debit card. Okay,
so before we get too deep down the rabbit hole, so you did find some cards, I guess banking cards or what have you, with Mr. Dewater's name on it, but then you found all this other stuff that did not have his name on it.
Correct. There was a mix of stuff.
Now, were you able to contact any of the other people's whose names are listed on the 2 IDs and the financial transaction cards?
No, ma'am. I tried contacting both people that had who had a driver's license by checking their information through GCIC, NCIC, and contacting the phone number they had on file. It was about 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning when all this occurred, and I was able to make contact with either of those people. And I was not able to contact anybody as far as the cards go because there is no way to verify that these people are actually who they are. I have no way of verifying that somebody's name is actually them. If you go to say, I can't verify that the information I'm searching and finding is actually the person this card belongs to.
Okay, I got you. But you know that they are not in this defendant's name.
Correct.
Okay. And at any point, was he ever able to clarify who all these other people's cards were or who they belonged to or how he got them or anything like that?
No, ma'am.
Did you leave him in the hospital that day?
Yes, ma'am. Due to his extreme medical condition and the staff at Southern Regional Hospital advised me that would be an extended stay for him due to the severity of his overdose. It was very clear to me that I would not be an effecting arrest that day. I would be taking out warrants for his arrest.
Did you, in fact, take out warrants for his arrest?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Now, let's go back to the financial transaction card. I believe you listed 2 before I stopped you. One of them belonged to a Missy and the other one belonged to
Rodney.
Who else?
So there is another black Cash App card in the name of Robert Hall. There is also a green Chime debit card in the name of Antonio Robertson.
Okay.
There is a red and white Bank of America debit card in the name of Ernest Irving Jr.
Okay.
There is a navy blue Visa debit card in the name of Victress Bridgman.
Okay.
And those were all the transaction cards that were not in his name.
And is it fair to say that this case is still being investigated to confirm victim information and victim notice and all that?
If our criminal investigation division at the Clayton County Police Department is still involved, that is not my knowledge.
Okay.
I'm still a road officer. I don't know what they're working up to.
So it would go to them at some point.
Correct. A felony case of this magnitude, yes, ma'am, it would definitely go to CID to further investigate it.
Okay. Now, let me ask you, were you equipped with body camera at the time?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know if it was active and functioning?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
Did it record this incident?
In its entirety.
From the medical intervention, at least when you got there, to locating the cards, all that stuff?
Yes, ma'am.
And where is that video now?
It's uploaded to our cloud system called Polaris. So anybody that wants the video camera footage can look it up on Polaris.
And what about Quick Trip? Did they have any video going that recorded this?
So after I had finished my investigation at Southern Regional Hospital, I made my way back to the Quick Trip to make contact with the ranking employee there to try to figure out what exactly happened before our arrival. Made contact with the assistant general manager. They don't have access to the security camera footage, so they put my FTO, Officer Milligan, on the phone with their tech services, and they pulled up the camera footage, and he watched that while I talked to the assistant general manager. General manager told me that when Mr. Dewater came in, which I was able to verify that was him due to his clothing description on the camera footage, he was obviously very impaired on something because he was stumbling around, he was bowing down, and he just was not acting normal in any way, shape, or form. We did not, Officer Milligan did not observe anything, and I did not observe anything happening on the video cameras that would lead me to believe that Mr. Dewater was poisoned, as he stated at the hospital. The camera footage starts when he just walks in the business and just starts walking around, stumbling around, and almost having a hard time standing up. And then
Did you see
approximately
any of the
five.
footage? Have you seen the footage, or was it just your
It was
your
both.
sergeant?
It was both of us. It was both of us. I saw it as well. I was looking over his shoulder the entire time.
And where's that footage now?
We didn't request that footage due to it not showing anything other than him just standing there waddling.
Okay, but did you all record any of it on body cam? Was any of it preserved?
It's all recorded on body cam. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And does it have audio, or is it just video?
It should just be video.
Okay.
It'll have the body cam ambient audio, but it's not going to have the actual audio from the security cam footage.
So we'll be able to hear people in the background as you all are watching it, but it won't
Correct.
be audio from the video itself.
Correct.
Okay. Now, are you on a laptop or a cell phone?
I'm on my laptop right now, ma'am.
You can see everybody in court right now?
If I press a couple buttons to scroll through all the people present, yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. Do you see the person that you came into contact with on this date and location we've been talking about?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Can you describe him by physical appearance and or article of clothing?
Yes, ma'am. He's an African male, has long dreads down to the top of the shoulders. He's currently wearing a white face mask and an orange jumpsuit, which is commonly worn by those in the Clayton County Detention Center.
Okay, one question. You
Yes,
said
ma'am.
African American or African? Which one?
African American.
Gotcha. Now, in 1 second, there's quite a few counts here. Make sure I cover them all. Also, while I'm going through what I have, the individuals that you listed, they are all subject to either identity fraud or the financial transaction card theft.
That is accurate. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I have a count of 8 persons that you named. Did I leave off anyone?
No, man, that should be it. The 2 Georgia IDs and the 6 transaction cards.
Okay. Oh, the narcotics that were recovered. What happened to that?
Yes, ma'am. So in the fanny pack as well were different bags of narcotics. I found a small clear bag of marijuana, a small clear bag of a light purple powder, and a plastic shopping bag that had kind of been cut open and twisted up, containing small blue pills. There was also a medicine bottle labeled isoniazid, which is an antibiotic used to treat tuberculosis, containing multiple small and different shaped multicolored pills, which I know in my knowledge, training, experience to be a form of methamphetamine and MDMA known as ecstasy.
So the multicolored pills you say were individually packaged?
No, ma'am. The multicolored and different shaped pills were all in the same container.
Oh, okay.
It was the medicine bottle that was labeled as isoniazid, which again is an antibiotic used to treat tuberculosis.
Okay. And the marijuana, were you able to get a weight on that?
Yes, ma'am, I was. I utilized the scale at the Clayton County Police Department evidence unit locker and measured the marijuana to weigh 7.28 grams approximately.
Okay. And what happened to the marijuana and the pills that were recovered?
All of them were placed into the evidence locker before the end of my shift and submitted with a DOFUS form for the GBI to be tested for substance identification, both the marijuana, the unknown purple powder, and the pills.
And you still have no idea. Do you have any idea what the purple powder is?
No, ma'am. I was not able to field test the powder, and I still submitted it as a unknown substance for drug identification.
Okay. Oh, just as a clarification, you said DOFUS. What is DOFUS?
A DOFUS form is a form where you input evidence to GBI's crime lab to be for substance identification.
Okay.
Sorry?
I'm just asking clarification for the term itself. I know what the form is, but DOFUS, is that Department of Forensic Sciences?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's what I wanted on the record.
Gotcha.
And that's with the state crime lab.
Yes, ma'am, with the Georgia Bureau of Investigations crime lab.
Okay. And I believe I covered everything. So that's all I have at this time. Reserved right for redirect.
All right, Attorney Rogers.
Yes. Officer Fender, you're the lead on this case right now?
Yes, sir.
And if I understood correctly, I guess a couple of things. Well, first, what time of day is this? Is this nighttime, daytime?
This occurred at night. The initial call came out. Initial call came out at about 22:38 hours on January 20, 2025.
And if I understood you correctly, it sounds like you eventually responded to the scene. You weren't the first person there, like as far as
Correct. Correct. Initially, it was just a call for Clayton County Fire and Emergency Services. But again, when they got on scene, there was another party there, Mr. Dewater, who was not involved in the original call for service that they observed to also be in need of medical assistance. And once they found the fanny pack containing the different ID and financial cards, as well as illegal substances, they called police so we could respond and investigate, which is when I arrived.
And if I understand correctly, I guess you mentioned a couple of different videos. So I guess I just kind of want to get clear. Sounds like, excuse me, it sounds like you got video from Quick Trip at some point, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you said you had body cam video running, correct?
Yes, sir. It should be on, if not my body camera footage, it should be on Officer Milligan's body camera footage.
And I don't want to assume anything, but I guess, fire and emergency services were there first, correct?
Correct.
Do they have any sort of video to your knowledge of the incident?
To my knowledge, I don't know if they do or not. I honestly can't recall if they wear body cameras or not.
And if I understand, while they're on a call about someone else, it somehow comes to their attention that Mr. Dewater appears to need assistance also.
Correct. Their original call was also at the same location, 5390 Riverdale Road at the Quick Trip, and as fate would have it, Mr. Dewater was there having his medical emergency well, and they noticed that and provided him medical attention.
And if I understand the testimony on direct correctly, at some point, once they make contact to provide medical assistance to before we jump to that part, is it your understanding they were under the impression he's having an overdose of some sort of drug overdose or something?
They quickly they advised me that they quickly came to the realization just based off of his behavioral patterns.
When we say behavioral patterns, and I know you weren't there at the time, but are they saying, is he still upright? Is he on the ground? Like, what is the pattern?
He is standing up, but he is having a hard time standing up, it should be on the security camera footage from Quick Trip that got captured by the body camera. He's standing up, but he's also slumped over. He's having a hard time maintaining his balance. His speech is very, very slurred. Very common indicators of substance impairment.
And so when they go to him, he's still upright, and they encounter, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but water hair I guess, attending to him, at some point they encountered a fanny pack, you said? Oh, excuse me, let me back up. You said they encountered a holster first, I think, correct?
They advised me that when they started providing medical attention, and the quick strip security camera footage does not inform me or show me what his state was at the specific moment Clayton County Fire and Emergency Services found him. All that they advised me is once they started rendering aid, they did find a holster on his person. And fearing there might be a firearm on him, they started looking around and they found the fanny pack, which is clipped to his belt. It's about yay big, and inside of that there was all the substances and items I mentioned earlier.
So if I understand, well, I don't know, do you know where the fanny pack is found? Like, is it found on his person also, or where's the
Correct.
fanny?
Correct. So it has a clip, like a plastic clip that clips it to his belt. The actual clip was still attached to his belt on his waistline, and the fanny pack, they unclipped it and removed it.
And so at the point that they unclip it and remove it, it's, if I understand correctly, he's not at that point, he's no longer in actual physical possession of it. As far as he's not holding it or anything like that, correct?
Once they removed it, he's not in physical possession of it, but he was in actual physical possession of it before they removed it and when they encountered him.
Right. I just want to make sure. So just so I'm clear on the answer to my question, at the time they've removed it, he's no longer like holding it or anything like at that point, right?
Correct.
And what do they do with it once they remove it? As in, do they
They,
put it
they,
away
they,
from him, or go ahead?
I don't know at which point they removed it. When I arrived on scene, they had already placed Mr. Dewater in the back of an ambulance and were performing aid. When I arrived to the side door of the ambulance, he motioned me up to come up in the ambulance, and he showed me the fanny pack containing the different items.
And just so I'm clear, this is Clayton County Fire and Emergency Services that you're talking
Yes, sir.
about.
Yes, sir. The specific unit should be Med 4.
And I guess I'm just trying to make sure I understand. It seems like at some point, once they remove the fanny pack from him, I guess my understanding is they were concerned about a possible firearm, so they removed the fanny pack from him. Does that not, to your knowledge, I guess, is he, does that not remove the concern about the possibility of a firearm if he's not holding it anymore?
It could. They're also trying to find identification on him to figure out who he is because they need identification for their patients. Because until I got involved and I had to utilize a clear search, which they don't have access to, they had no clue who he was. He was just a John Doe that was going to the hospital for an overdose that was possibly fatal if they didn't get him emergency services ASAP.
Understood. So just so I'm clear though, yeah, because I thought what you said was that they removed it and went through because they were concerned about a firearm. So does that?
They said that that was their initial reason for searching through his items. Yes.
In the part that you just offered, did they tell you that personally?
Yes, they informed me that he had a holster on his person, and they thought he had a firearm, so they started searching.
Yeah, let me be clear. The part about the ID and all that that you just said about John Doe and all of this, are you saying one of them told you that?
One of them didn't tell me that, but I know in my knowledge, training, experience from working hand in hand with Clayton County Fire and Emergency Services 5 nights a week that they always require identification on people, especially if it is a critical scenario like this, and that they do search people for identification, even if police are not there.
When you say require identification, you're saying they won't treat people unless they have identification?
No, that's poor phrasing on my end. They don't require it, as in they refuse treatment. Is they try to find identification. They will do. They try every avenue they can to identify a person for the treatment they receive, especially in a case where it's obviously an overdose.
But just so I'm clear, since you mentioned all this experience and everything, the hospital will take a John Doe, correct?
They will, yes, but it's always better to identify the person, especially if the person passes away from an overdose. So we actually at least know who they are, and we can notify next of kin. Because again, but almost as soon as I got on there, Fire and Emergency Services advised me that we need to go to the hospital now because they think he's going to die.
And so at some point, once they separated Mr. Dewater from the bag, they searched through the bag, correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
And if I understood correctly, your understanding at least is that they were searching for a firearm.
That they were searching for a firearm is what they told me, and is my understanding, again, through working with them hand in hand 5 nights a week, that they all commonly search somebody's wallet and bags and personal belongings to find an ID, especially when the subject is unresponsive as he was.
Did you see the bag?
Yes, I saw the bag.
Could you describe it for us?
It is a small black fanny pack. It's about yay big, right, smaller than a football, and it has a zipper on it, and it has a clip that attaches like to the belt, like a plastic clip. I don't know how to describe the
Is
clip
it
otherwise.
is it soft-sided or hard-sided?
Is it what? Sorry.
Is it soft-sided or
Yes,
hard-sided?
it's soft sided. It's not. It is not a hard sided case. Soft sided.
So, and I don't want to assume, but to me, soft-sided would imply that a person could just kind of handle the bag itself and determine whether or not there's a firearm in there, correct?
It depends. I personally own a firearm that, when you fold it up, it's supposed to look and feel like a phone or a card, but when you unfold it, it's actually a firearm.
But
You
I
can't.
guess,
One can't assume.
okay. So your position is that regardless of whether or not something feels like a firearm or looks like a firearm, it's still a basis to treat it like a firearm?
No, my understanding is that if we suspect that there's a firearm on a person, then if we find something that could be a firearm, because again, based off my knowledge, training, experience, I know an object shaped like my phone in somebody's pocket could be a firearm. I'm at least going to investigate it and ask about it.
Okay. So the holster that they found on him, was it a credit card shaped holster?
Was it a what holster?
A credit card shaped holster.
No.
Attorney Rogers, okay, we've been on this for quite some time. Where are we going with this?
Well, Judge, I'm trying to figure out what the basis, for one, if they're going to conduct a search, you don't get to just do a search because you feel like it. And so at this point, if this is what his position is for why they're searching, I'm trying to have him explain why they did what they did.
Well, I think that we're going into too many scenarios as to what it could have been. So
Oh,
let's
Judge,
stick to the facts about what was seen, how it was seen. Let's not talk about what it could have been. Let's talk about what it was.
Judge, I'm not the one who started coming up with the
Yeah,
hypotheticals.
I'm just saying
That was the
to
witness.
yeah. So, officer, if we could not go into any type of scenarios, just
Mhm.
talk about what happened, okay?
Mhm.
Thank you.
So
All right.
the holster, okay, thank you. So the holster, it was a conventional, the holster was like what you would find for a conventional firearm, correct?
It was a soft-shelled holster for any generic firearm. It was not fitted for any specific firearm.
Yeah, I said a conventional firearm.
Uh, it was fitted for a standard shaped firearm, but it could hold any firearm. Yes.
And so then once the search is conducted of the bag, is, I guess, it's secured by the emergency personnel, correct?
The what's done by the emergency personnel? Sorry.
Once the search is done by the emergency personnel,
Mhm.
they still have the bag when you arrive, correct?
Correct.
Just out of curiosity, do they do any sort of chain of evidence kind of paperwork or anything?
Do they have any sort of trail of
Right,
evidence?
right. Do they
You
do
would
any
have to
sort
you for that specifics. You'd have to reach out to them. With all due respect, sir, I arrived on scene after this happened. All I can tell you is what they advised me, what I know in my knowledge, training, experience. If you want their specific reasoning for everything, and you want their trail of paperwork, it'd probably be a good idea to ask them and not me.
Okay, but I'm asking you right now, though, did they provide you anything like that?
Any trail of paperwork? No.
Any sort of chain of custody, chain of evidence, anything like that?
No, because he never left their custody. He was in emergency. He was in a paramedic's custody all the way to the hospital. At which point he entered the hospital's custody. I was just there
Officer
investigating.
Fender, Officer Fender, I think he's asking you, in relation to what you communicated to the court, what you testified to about what the, medics said. He's asking you, was any of that put in writing? I think is that right, Attorney
Oh,
Ryan?
Yes, sir. Essentially, did they
Okay,
document their taking possession
okay.
when they
My
went there?
apologies for the misunderstanding. No, they did not have any transfer of property paperwork.
okay, all right. Go ahead, Attorney Rogers.
Thank you. Now, if I understood you correctly, you said you did try to talk to Mr. Dewater at some point, right?
Correct. I did.
But that he wasn't able to provide any, I guess, any responses other than I think he said name, date of birth, and the possibility of being poisoned.
Yes. I wasn't even able to verify the year. All he said was Isaac, November 6th, and he mentioned something about being poisoned. I didn't even catch all of what he said about being poisoned because his voice was very strained, very light, and very raspy. I just heard I was poisoned amongst all his other groans and ramblings.
And so, as it stands right now, I guess, do you know how the cars came to be in that bag?
I do not.
Do you know how long they have been in the bag?
I do not.
Do you know anything about the relationship amongst the parties?
I do not.
And if I understood you correctly on direct, you were saying that you hadn't been able to speak to anybody as far as the list of names.
Correct. My initial investigation yielded no results with contact.
Now, I think you also mentioned, I think there was let me check my notes before. I think there was a mention of finding, I think it said marijuana, maybe a light purple powder, and some
Um,
pills. That,
I can look back at specifically what I found because again, it was a lot. Yeah, there was a small baggie containing marijuana. There's a small baggie containing the multicolored pills. There's a light blue. There is a light purple powder, and there is a couple small blue pills.
and let me ask, because I want to make sure I understand something about the charges on here. I think you got him charged with, looks like maybe dangerous drugs not in the original container. Is that correct?
Correct.
And just so I'm clear, are you saying he was in possession of any sort of a prescription pill of some sort of prescription substance?
Um, the pills we had were not any prescription pills. They didn't have any markings on them like that would coincide with prescription pills. Plus, the bottle was again labeled as an antibiotic. None of the pills we had the appropriate markings on them as a prescription pill would have.
Right. So I guess I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear. So you're not saying you have prescription pills. You're charging him for having just a bottle that has the name of a prescription pill on it.
Correct. The specific charge is for having improper medication inside of a bottle that has a prescription pill on it. Because the pills that were field tested positive for MDMA were found inside the container that had the antibiotic label on it.
And you talked about, I believe that based on your knowledge, training, experience, you knew that he had marijuana. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
When you say your knowledge, training, experience, what what constitutes marijuana for our purposes?
Well, in my knowledge training experience, I know that marijuana is most commonly a green leafy substance. It comes in little balls about yay big and has a strong, almost like acidic skunk like smell. This reeked very strongly of it and it matched this description.
What's the legal limit for THC for marijuana?
Legal limit for THC for marijuana? I do not
Right.
know, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to object at this time. The officers clearly testified that he is not a lab specialist, that the substances that were recovered were sent to the crime lab, and that for the purposes of a probable cause hearing, Your Honor, he has indicated based on his knowledge, training, and experience that the substances that were recovered appeared to him to be marijuana, THC, and some type of unknown purple powder.
All
And
right. I
Judge,
agree.
Judge,
Objection. Oh, go ahead and respond, Attorney Rogers.
for one, I'm entitled to a thorough and sifting cross, Judge. But for number two, if he's going to testify that that's the basis for his assertions, then it would defeat the purpose of the hearing if I'm not allowed to ask him about these things. If he says, I got this knowledge, I have this training, but y'all can't ask me about it, then how do we give it any credence?
Attorney Rogers, I think he was very descriptive in describing the marijuana. I mean, I don't think there's
No,
anything else he can say.
I asked him about his knowledge, Judge. He said that his basis for calling it marijuana was his knowledge, training, and experience. Now I'm asking him about his knowledge as far as number one, does he know what constitutes marijuana under the laws of Georgia? If he
And
does, he
Your Honor,
knows. If he
I
doesn't, he
don't think,
doesn't.
Attorney Rogers, I don't think that's relevant in this setting. So I'm going to sustain Attorney Rogers, excuse me,
And
ADA Thomas objection. You can move on, Attorney Rogers.
Judge, respectfully, if I could just push back a little bit, Judge. I,
Okay, we'll move on from that question. If you want to ask him about his knowledge, but that particular question is not relevant in this setting.
just, just for clarity, which question are we referring to? I just want to make sure I don't
Do you know what the
ask.
law is for THC? I think that was your question or something like
No,
that.
no, ma'am, Judge. My question was, what is the legal limit for THC for marijuana? Because he
Okay,
said he knows that it's marijuana, but if he doesn't know what marijuana is, how could he say that this is marijuana?
because his
First, he has to know
training
what
and experience,
the
Attorney Rogers, he said in his training and experience, he talked about his experience early on. He said that he could identify, he was very specific about what he identified. So, but go ahead, and you can go a little further.
Thank
Not about the law, not about the law and THC,
well,
but go
Judge, I
ahead.
guess just to kind of make sure I guess I want to understand enough to be able to go forth, keep going.
Okay.
Uh, so it's the court's position that it doesn't, he doesn't need to know what constitutes marijuana under our law to be able to say something is marijuana?
I think that I'm satisfied with his training and experience and him identifying that it was in fact marijuana. But you can go back, you can go further into his knowledge if you like. But the court recognizes and accepts his description of the marijuana.
Okay. Officer, how many hours of training do you have in drug recognition?
Whatever was provided to me through Georgia's basic law enforcement training course.
Okay. What's that number? When somebody says how many,
I don't
that's a
know the
number.
specific number, sir. It was 15
How?
weeks of academy that passed by in a blur. I don't remember most of the specific numerical amounts.
Okay. So you don't know.
I'm pretty sure I could pull my post records.
Okay. But as it stands right now, you don't know how many hours of drug recognition you've had.
Correct. I don't even remember how many hours the academy was overall.
What classes did you
Your
take in
Honor,
drug recognition?
Your Honor, I think we've gone way beyond the scope of a preliminary hearing regarding the officers' classes at the academy and all of this. The officer did indicate, as the court noted, based on his knowledge, training, and experience. The experience part is the part that you can't put a number on. He's been an officer for a little while now, and he apparently has seen items like this before. So that would be the part of the recognition of the substance. Now, definitely what it is something that he will not know and won't know until the report comes back from the Department of Forensic
All right,
Sciences.
ADA Thomas, in your direct, and in officer's testimony, he said in his training and experience, he can identify marijuana. Attorney Rogers simply said, what is your training and experience? And I think that that's a fair question. What is your training and experience? Officer, go ahead and answer.
My training is a basic law enforcement training course, class 039 through the police academy with Clayton County Police Department. As far as my specific courses and their hour amounts, I'm pretty sure you could find my post records. If not, that might be for later. As far as my experience, like was just mentioned, I've been officer for some time now. I have
What's
seen,
sometime, officer? What's sometime?
so I've been officer for approximately 15 weeks now. And as is common in Clayton County, I encounter substances like this on a very, very common occurrence. And my knowledge is that the marijuana commonly used, as is such, I found on Mr. Dewater, is a processed marijuana leaf, as it is why it's a green leafy substance. My training was that this is the most common form, and it is in little buds like this. And my experience is that every time I have found this in the public, it has always been marijuana, and has been
Okay.
many times. My experience is many times I have found this, and this is completely disregarding the fact that I have encountered
Judge,
it
I'm gonna jump in.
outside of my law enforcement career.
Wait a minute,
Judge,
wait a
I'm
minute.
gonna jump
We're
in.
not gonna talk at the same time. Hold on, hold on.
For what
All right.
I'm going to object, this is not responsible, and he's just rambling at this point, Judge. He keeps going around and around in circles. So at this point,
Attorney Rogers, I think that he testified he's been an officer for 15 weeks and that during this time he has seen marijuana and able to identify what was marijuana, and then it was then found out to be marijuana. And so do you have any questions to him about
yes, ma'am.
about that experience? Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I'll take that version of it. Officer, have you submitted things that you thought to be marijuana to the GBI?
Many times before, yes, sir.
And when you say many times before, how many times are we talking about? At least
I can't remember every single call I've done, but if I were to give you a ballpark estimate, it's between 5 and 10.
okay, 25 and 10 times.
Probably closer to 10 if I were to take a swing at it.
How many times have you followed up to see whether or not the GBI confirmed that the substance was marijuana?
Oh, I regularly check. It's just that within the GBI DOFUS lab is very backed up, and it's not. They can't just test it and give me results that quick. So that's why I submitted anyways.
So how many times have you received results confirming?
I haven't received any results for any of my cases I've submitted to the Georgia DOFUS lab. Which, again, it is my knowledge, training, experience that is marijuana. I can't confirm it.
Nobody even asked him a question.
You cannot. Yes, you have. You only can respond to questions. Okay, you can't just start giving narratives. All right. Anything else, Attorney Rogers?
No further questions at this time.
All right, 88 Thomas, you have any redirect? Thomas, you're muted.
Sorry about that, Your Honor. Officer, is it your understanding that it is protocol to secure a weapon if it is thought that a weapon could be present?
Objection, Judge. Relevance and is vague. I'm not sure who's
absolutely. Attorney Rogers, sustained. Attorney 88 Thomas, you need to rephrase that, but I'm not going to allow him to answer that question. You need to rephrase it.
You know, this is as a follow-up to defense counsel's questioning, which was fairly extensive regarding who had the weapon and what were they doing with it and all of this other. So my question is fairly straightforward. Is it protocol to secure a weapon?
The still is vague. Number one, is it protocol for who? Number one, and number two, I'm not sure what the relevance is to the charges.
You asked defense counsel, Your Honor, asked several questions pertaining to the weapon. I believe because it got down into couldn't you feel a weapon from the outside? Could you see it? Why would they be going into the pouch? And the officer was explained why fire services would go into the pouch and what the condition was when he got there. At least that was my understanding of what he was saying during his testimony.
Right, but I think it's an inappropriate question to ask him generally what medics will do and why. I think that's inappropriate, this officer.
Your Honor, actually, I did not specify fire because he does not work for that department. That's why I say, is it standard protocol? Because I was directing it towards him as an officer and not them as fire personnel.
But it's not him that found the weapon. It wasn't him. Excuse me. It wasn't him that found this fanny pack. So that's irrelevant in this case. It doesn't matter.
You understand? Move on.
He would have done because it wasn't another officer that found it. So that's
move on. I'll move on from that question.
All right.
Officer, is it a safety issue if a weapon is thought to be on a person?
It
Objection,
depends on the
Judge. Again,
circumstance.
it calls for speculation, and she's not saying who. Like, is it a safety concern for who, what person? Like, it's a vague question, and it's not.
Apparently, it wasn't, Your Honor. The officer was attempting to answer the question. It's specific to his experience. Is it a safety issue or not?
And it's still irrelevant. The officers they have pistols on them, so I'm not clear if the question is about whether or not an officer has a weapon on them. Like, it's irrelevant and it's vague.
All right, hold on, Attorney Rogers. So, ADA Thomas, are you asking them if they were in a situation like that, would that be concerning? Is that what you're asking him?
I was, Your Honor, but at this point in time, Your Honor, I believe the court may have heard what the court needs for the purposes of probable cause. So I'm going to stop at this point.
Okay, all righty. Closing arguments. Go ahead, ADA Thomas.
State will reserve to the end, Your Honor.
All right, Attorney Rogers.
Thank you. Judge, I guess the first thing I'll start with is the this identification of marijuana should hold any weight. This officer hadn't told us not that he can't say he's taking 30 minutes of drug recognition. He tells us how long he's taking. We don't know if his previous guesses were correct or not. And this is one of those things I kind of think about. This kind of stuff, it doesn't fly nowhere else in life. Like if I go to the credit agency, if I go to the bank looking for a loan, they're gonna know what percentage of my loans am I paying back. They're not just gonna be like, just take my word for my knowledge, training, experience, and I'm gonna pay it back. If I'm shooting free throws or I'm a quarterback, people want to know about my completion percentage, my accuracy rate. Here, we don't know anything about his accuracy rate. This man said he submitted maybe 10 or 15 times, doesn't have any feedback on his accuracy rate. Didn't tell us. I gave him an opportunity. There was an objection when I tried to give him a chance to tell us about whatever procedures he uses to make these identifications. Man does not know how much THC is required to constitute marijuana. It has to be more than 0.3% by dry weight. That's a requirement under the statute. Otherwise, it's hemp. And so he hadn't shown any basis, any knowledge of the statute, hadn't shown any discussion or anything to say that what he says should go. So that'd be my first basis to ask for a dismissal as it relates to the marijuana charges. As it relates to the cards, the financial transaction card theft, and fraud and those allegations. For one, you don't know who these people are. Number one, you don't know if they have given Mr. Dewater permission to have these cards. He doesn't seem. I'm not sure, and I don't want to put words into his mouth, but I'm not sure if he's clear on whether or not these are actual people or not, based on his response. So as it stands right now, I'm not even clear if these are actual people. Number one, you don't know if Mr. Dewater has permission to have these cards. I'm guessing, a lot of times what the state, the government wants people to do is just assume that if you have this or if you have that you're in the wrong. But that's not, what he's testified to. He hasn't said, I talked to such and such card holder and they said he's not supposed to have this card. You're not saying I know who this person is and they said they don't know this person or anything like that. Mr. Dewater wasn't in any position to explain the situation. So it's not as if he said something that would be incriminating. And I would point out, when I pulled up 16931 just to take a look at the financial transaction card theft statute, to the extent that what the officer has jumped to a conclusion, what that statute says about prima facie cases is that if the person's in possession of two or more financial cards of other people other than members of his immediate family or without the consent of the card holder, that would be prima facie evidence. But they don't have that here. They can't say that those aren't his family members. They can't say that he doesn't have their consent to have them. And he didn't say one word one way or the other. Not to mention the search that I'll generously call questionable. When your concern is about a pistol, or a firearm or something that would be holstered traditionally, and now you've gone through this man's bag looking for a gun and turning it over to law enforcement. But that's for another day. My point is merely that this man, the witness doesn't know enough to say what's marijuana and what's not. Number two, there haven't been any sufficient investigation done to support a finding that he's in possession of these items without the permission of the card holders. So there's no basis to jump to it being fraudulent. So I'd ask that essentially all the charges be dismissed. But to come back, actually, let me finish. I want to go back to that drugs not in I believe, the original container. Matter of fact, I'm going to pull the statute up so I can call it by its right name. But essentially what I'm getting to, 161375, about possession being legal when drugs are in the original container. Judge, that statute is about if I have prescription pills, but they're not in the proper container. It's not that I have a container that has the name of a prescription item on it that constitutes that charge. So that charge, that's just a complete misinterpretation of the statute. So that charge be dismissed for the fact that this statute covers when possession of drugs is legal. It does not say if you have some drug, which I'm claiming is a street drug, in a prescription container, that now that's a charge. It doesn't say it's illegal to have a container with the name of a prescription drug on it. That's not what the statute says. So for all those reasons, Judge, I'd be asking you to dismiss them all. They may have alleged a field test as related to one of the substances. To that extent, I will concede or submit on that one. But other than that, I'll be asking for a dismissal for everything else. Thank you.
All right. ADA Thomas.
I'll stand on the testimony of the officer, Your Honor.
Hold on one moment. All right, based upon the evidence presented, I do find that there is sufficient probable cause to bind all the charges over to the Clayton County Superior Court. That's the order of the court. All right, and then after that, if we can please get ready for, what officer do we have here, ADA Thomas, that we can go ahead and start this next one?
It just ain't came through yet.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm another officer on the line. Officer Middleton is currently logged on. That would be Attorney Lewis's case, Colon McDonald.
Okay, all right, Deputy, if you would get Mr. McDonald, please.
Your Honor, before the deputy grabs Mr. McDonald, I need to run to the restroom right quick. If the court can give me about 5 minutes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.